Hello and welcome back to another video. Lately, I've been watching some really great films across different genres and I keep noticing this pattern. Some films don't just make you feel uncomfortable in the moment. They leave something behind, a strange feeling, a lingering question, this sense that reality might be slightly off. And that's what I want to break down today, why these films are so brilliant, which films unsettle us, why they unsettle us, and what to do about them. If we haven't met, my name is Lyra. I'm an actor, writer, and filmmaker, so I spend a lot of time thinking about films, making films, and lately I've been watching a lot of films that have messed with my sense of reality. So putting this list together was actually really fun. So let's get into it. I'm starting with the most recent film I saw, BACKROOMS, directed by Kane Parsons. I watched this film a couple weeks ago, so I've had some time to sit in the weirdness of this film. Let's start with the premise. We have our main character, Clark, a failed architect who owns a furniture store. One day, he discovers a doorway into the basement that leads into the back rooms, which are basically an impossible maze of empty rooms and hallways. In terms of his character and personality, he's temperamental. He's having issues in his marriage. The back rooms have all the familiar structure of a building: walls, carpets, doors, lights, hallways, but there's no logic to the bigger picture of the place. It's unsettling because it looks familiar. You recognize it, but it doesn't add up. The big picture doesn't add up. That's important because architecture usually orients us. It gives us direction, scale, function. For example, if I'm on the first floor and I go up the stairs, I expect to reach the second floor. If I walk through a hallway, I expect the hallway to lead somewhere. But in Backrooms, that basic logic fails. The office building does not orient you. And once the architecture stops making sense, once your physical space stops making sense, the horror becomes psychological. Every hallway creates the expectation that this puzzle is about to be solved, that this might finally be the way out. But that expectation fails again and again. There's no map. There's no clear exit. There's just miles and miles of empty rooms. If you've ever been lost in an airport, you know how quickly a space can start to feel liminal, or even an empty school. The architecture of my building was beautiful, but when I arrived really early in the morning, like 5:30 for training, it felt so uncanny to walk down these dark hallways, empty hallways, because no one was there. It was just me walking from this side of the building to the other side of the building to get to the gym. And yeah, there were signs and I was oriented, but it was still terrifying. But take that orientation away, take those signs away, and that same space becomes unsettling and horrifying and disorienting. What's interesting to me about this film is that it doesn't force one clean interpretation. It could be about mental disintegration. It could be about liminal spaces. It could be about being trapped in a pattern you can't escape, because once you're wired a certain way, you are wired for life. And if you look at the character of Clark, the backrooms kind of feel like a physical manifestation of his mental state. He's stuck in life. He's stuck in his career, in his marriage, in therapy. He's a failed architect who ends up inside an architectural nightmare. The thing that he wanted to master, that he was so passionate about, space, structure, design, becomes the very thing that traps him. There's also something strangely contemporary about the emptiness of the backrooms. They have this generated feeling, almost like AI slop, because the images look recognizable but empty. Rooms repeat, shapes repeat. They all look familiar, but it feels hollow. It feels like human society has left behind this architecture, but none of its meaning. There's no humanity to it. And dare I say, there's no soul to it. That's why the atmosphere in the film feels so unsettling. When I first discovered liminal spaces in the Backrooms, I went down these rabbit holes of really eerie visuals, like dark water nightmare spaces and empty corridors and places that feel familiar but wrong. And this film captures that feeling so incredibly well. It creates this sense of being trapped forever and ever in an environment you don't recognize and you cannot make sense of. And I would say that's what makes Backrooms so unsettling. The next film I want to chat about is Obsession, directed by Cory Barker. This was such a roller coaster ride for me. The tension builds really well. The premise is simple and efficient, and you can tell that it was made by a director who's very self-assured. The performances are bold. The whole thing becomes animalistic and glorious and grotesque all at once. It takes this feeling of having a crush on someone that is honestly so innocent and pushes it until it becomes something so disturbing. This film overall just asks really interesting questions about love and romance and relationships and dating. Like, is love still love if someone doesn't get to choose freely? If you liked how Backrooms and Obsession made you feel unsettled, this next film, GATTACA, directed by Niccol in 1997, is unsettling in a colder, more intellectual way. The world in this film is so clean and elegant and rational, at least according to the society inside it. But that is exactly what makes this film so terrifying, the future so terrifying. I just have to say that this film has such a good cast. Ethan Hawke, Jude Law, Uma Thurman, and I'm honestly surprised that I hadn't heard of it until recently because it feels so incredibly relevant right now. So let's get into it. GATTACA is about a future society where your DNA basically determines the life you're allowed to have, your social class, your career, your entire sense of self. Ethan Hawke plays Vincent, who is natural born, meaning his parents did not genetically optimize him before birth. So Vincent is considered genetically inferior because he is a natural born. And the way that it's shown in the film, it's really clean, it's procedural, it's discrimination disguised as science. So this film is really about what happens when society starts treating your DNA as objective truth. It's about bioethics and optimization and the politics of designing a better society and a better human being. And the terrifying thing is that this system, again, does not look evil. It's normalized, it looks elegant, it looks efficient, it looks like progress. That is why this film feels so relevant right now. I'm seeing so much discourse around biohacking and looks maxing and extreme self-optimization and the pressure to constantly improve your body and your future. And GATTACA doesn't feel like distant science fiction film reality anymore. It feels like warning. Of course, I understand that looks maxing and biohacking are not the same thing as institutional genetic ranking in GATTACA. But in this film, the hierarchy is built into the society, and there's this fear of if your future is determined by your body, who are you really? What is your value? What if your value is measured before anyone actually gets to know you? What's interesting and sad is that even the people who are genetically superior are not as happy and whole or fulfilled as you would expect them to be. So the film is really asking, like I'm really asking, like what are we optimizing for? The next film I have for you today is Never Let Me Go, directed by Romanek in 2010. And this one is unsettling in a sadder, quieter way. I'm a little worried that I'm going to give the spoilers away, but when I look this film up, it shows me the spoilers. Friends Kathy, Tommy, and Ruth grew up together at a boarding school in the English countryside. When they leave the school and the horrible truth of their true purpose is revealed to them, they must simultaneously confront deep-seated feelings of love, jealousy, and betrayal that threaten to tear their friendship asunder. It's based on a dystopian novel where clones are raised in boarding schools to become organ donors. So these characters are merely organ donors. I want to be honest, this film made me feel helplessly unsettled. It makes you as a human being feel so disposable, and it shows exploitation in this very quiet, gentle, beautiful, but devastating way. This film is beautiful in terms of cinematography and directing, and the performances are phenomenal. But what is happening inside the film, inside these schools, is absolutely horrendous. It makes you sit with these questions of mortality and cruelty and what it means to be a human. It's not unsettling because it shocks you with violence. It's unsettling because it shows these characters slowly realizing the truth of their lives and still not being able to escape it. This film deeply moved me, and if you want to get out of your cinematic comfort zone, I would highly recommend that you watch this film. Let's discuss a completely different type of an unsettling film. This one is more about workplace systems, abuse, and the corrupt nature of power. The film is The Assistant, directed by Kitty Green in 2019. In this film, Julia Garner is an assistant in a toxic production office. Her entire day is manual labor. So coffee runs, phone calls, travel bookings, emails. And the best way I can describe this film is something is wrong, but no one is allowed to say it. This film doesn't explain anything to you. It's just giving you the information and asking you to come to your own conclusions about what it's showing you. And I would say that that is an unsettling aspect of this film. It's shot in this documentary observational style, and the whole film is so controlled and muted and desaturated and procedural. You might even find it underwhelming when you're watching it. But maybe that's the point. The directing is so restrained that it creates this eerie feeling over the whole thing. There's no big dramatic confrontation. Well, there's one, but it gets shut down very quickly. And in the end, there's no catharsis. The horror very much is in the small details. Like if you remember Backrooms, you remember the office and the chairs and the hallways. In this one, the repetition is the coffee runs, the machines, the emails, the phone calls, the banality of her everyday routine. There is an abusive man at the center of this film, but we never see him. And the film, I guess, is really about the ecosystem around him that is protecting him, and everyone understands that if they speak up, they could lose their jobs, they could lose their livelihood, they could be maybe blacklisted from the industry, like especially her, because she is trapped in a physical space. She's young, she's impressionable, she's trying to be professional, but she is trapped emotionally, financially, professionally. She's ambitious, but she's replaceable. And he knows that, the system knows that, the people around him know that. And that is what makes this film suffocating and unsettling. The next film is Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene by Sean Durkin, starring Elizabeth Olsen, who is incredible in this. It's about her as a woman who leaves a cult and tries to return to her normal life. Physically, she has left, but psychologically, she's still inside that cult. If you want to see an epitome of identity fragmentation, this is a great film. It's quiet, naturalistic, and tense. but there is this constant feeling of something is going to collapse. As a filmmaker, this one was so interesting to watch because it moves between timelines without clearly distinguishing them. So as an audience, you're never fully grounded, and of course, that mirrors the mental state of Elizabeth Olsen's character. This film makes you feel really unstable. It's unsettling because you realize how fragile your sense of self can be when your brain has been trained to survive inside an unhealthy system, like a cult, or really any unhealthy system. Your ego, your identity, all the patterns that you have, they protect you, but once your perception gets wired a certain way, it takes a lot of work to recognize what is safe, what is dangerous, and if the past is just repeating inside your mind over and over again to protect you. I've been on the fence about whether or not to include this next film, but I think it actually goes really well with the previous one. The Invisible Man definitely, oh gosh, made me feel so weird, but in a way that made me want to write more and direct more thrillers. Is that weird? There's such a kinetic energy to that film, and it's so engaging the whole time. It has a lot of cool elements, and I found myself inspired by how tightly it moves. Of course, it's not a perfect film, but it has a lot of cool elements. Part of that is Elizabeth Moss. She's always great, but in this film specifically, she's brilliant. She plays Cecilia, a woman who escapes her abusive boyfriend, and she continues to feel haunted by him even after he's gone out of her life. But the terrifying part is that no one believes her. And this film becomes sci-fi meets relationship horror. It has abuse, surveillance, gaslighting, technology being used as a tool to hurt someone. And the world's worst ex-boyfriend, who also happens to be a wealthy optics engineer, so naturally he can make himself invisible and haunt her forever and ever. She's being watched, controlled, attacked by someone no one else can see. So when she tells people what is happening, what her reality is, they don't believe her, or they only believe her to a point. Her reality is true, but no one else can see it. So she starts to look paranoid, unstable, and traumatized. Consequently, she loses her job, her relationships, her credibility. And the film keeps asking this same question: what happens when you're telling the truth, but the truth makes you look insane? His invisibility also works as a metaphor for abusive men with status and how they can disappear behind charm and money and reputation and plausible deniability. Okay, it makes sense why I thought it was necessary to include this film on this list, because it's very Gone Girl adjacent. It's unsettling. It's also viscerally interesting to see how fragile your identity can become when someone more powerful than you controls the story that everyone believes about you. I also watched The Terminator, the 1984 film directed by James Cameron. And of course, everyone knows this film, but I wanted to add it to this list because it fits so well. For anyone who doesn't know, this film is about Sarah Connor, who becomes the target of a what would you call it? Like a cyborg assassin who's sent from the future. His only job is to kill her. There are reasons for why that is happening and why he wants to kill her, and I won't get into that only because that is spoiler territory. But what I do want to talk about is why it feels unsettling. The previous film that we chatted about, The Invisible Man, is about a woman being haunted by a man that no one can see. Well, The Terminator is about one woman being hunted by a machine that cannot be reasoned with. He does not have emotions. He does not get tired. He does not lose focus. He does not care about morality, pain, guilt, or consequences. He just keeps going. It's such a significant film, and maybe even more culturally relevant now because of our anxieties around AI and autonomous machines and gun culture and technological dependence and the loss of human agency. As soon as I watched this film, I realized that James Cameron also directed Titanic, which on paper feels like such a huge genre jump, but then you realize that Terminator and Titanic and Avatar are all stories about these humans who are being pressed down by these huge systems, and they're just trying to survive against impossible odds. So, great director. So those are some unsettling films for you and why they might be unsettling. I just appreciate that these films are able to visually make us feel so unsettled emotionally and psychologically too. And because of these films, we understand what it feels like to be trapped in a space, in a relationship, in a workplace, in a body, in a memory, in a future that is bigger than us. Some of these films made me paranoid. They made me sad. They made me want to write. They made me want to stare at a wall and question society forever. I think it's really cool that these films can do that, and it was so great to chat about these films, and I hope you don't get too weirded out by these films, and if you do, go dancing with some friends, and happy watching.